Pleasure.
What's up, world, and welcome to the Super Investor Show. My name's John Harry, and I'm going to be your host today. But it's not about me, because I'm fanboying today. We have one of my favorite projects, but not only that, someone who inspired me to actually get behind the mic and interview people, but most importantly, learn how to connect with them. So it feels surreal for me now to switch the roles, put her in the interviewee spot, and an honor to bring her closer to you, the community. Because on this show, what we do is we take a super investor who feels like a superhero. We identify what their superpower is, but more importantly, what their weakness is. Because arguably the weakness is more interesting than the superpower itself. So if everyone can help me welcome our first guest up onto the show today, Zenobia Godschalk.
Hello, Jordan. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you. I always try to describe how I feel with the beginning of the day. So today's Wednesday. Wonderful.
Excellent. I love it.
And how's your Wednesday going?
My Wednesday is going fabulous. We kicked off the day with a Hedera council meeting this morning. I've done some school things with my kids as they start school this week. I've got this, which is a real pleasure and a treat for me. And we have a Twitter Spaces with one of the projects that's building on Hedera later today. So no two Wednesdays are ever exactly the same, but this is certainly a fun one.
And you wouldn't want it any other way, that's for sure.
That's right. That's right.
So Zenobia, I know who you are. Probably too much information that I've done my deep search on you. However, there's going to be a few people watching this right now who don't know who you are. So how would you define Zenobia?
Sure. Oh my goodness. So many things. But for this audience, so my background, I am the SVP of Communications at Swirlds Labs. And Swirlds Labs has been spun off to continue the growth and development of the Hedera network. My background is I graduated with a degree in economics and industrial engineering. I've worked in finance and PR and investor relations for a long time. I was a sell-side analyst covering internet security and infrastructure when that was a very nascent part of the web. And I had run a PR agency for a long, long time, promised myself I would never go back in-house to work for a company. And after a few years of working on a contract basis with Manson Lehman, the pull of what Hedera was doing was just far too strong for me to say no. So I spend, most of my day trying to figure out how to tell the great stories, not just of the network, which is, essentially it's a layer one network. It is a tool that other people use to build on. So how do we go out and tell all those great stories of the amazing people and projects and things that are being built on the Hedera network?
Remarkable. But we know that's not your superpower. Even though that you're very good at what you do. And like I said, I gain massive inspiration watching you weekly, monthly, when you do your interviews. We know that your superpower is something else. So we'll start with our first question, which is, what is your superpower, Zenobia?
Yes. So I think, and in the context of, I know you had asked it as my superpower as an investor, I will never claim to give investment advice. So that's the first thing here. But I think that what my gray hairs that I have earned, allow me to do is have patience and perspective, and to use that patience and perspective to pattern match. So when I think about one of my early jobs, I worked for Loud Cloud, which then became Opsware. It was run by Marc Andreessen and Ben Horowitz. Everybody says, oh my gosh, that was such an amazing, almost overnight success story. Yes, that was a success story 7 years in the making. Right? So from the outside, people always think that things take a shorter amount of time than they really do. And, you have to allow yourself to not be distracted by the latest shiny thing. When I was at LoudCloud, I remember early on in our journey, we were having trouble because some of our competitors were announcing results and revenue and things that we were just scratching our head like, hey, this doesn't make sense. Like, the math of this doesn't make sense. Historical patterns would not indicate that this is actually true. Like, how are they doing this? And it turns out that they were actually not doing things by the book, right? They were not. They were sort of double counting revenue, or they were doing some sketchy things that got them in quite a bit of trouble. So, I think having had that experience and having seen things, over time you say, if something looks too good to be true and looks too fast to be true in terms of a quick hit and a quick return, you need to dig deeper, right? There's likely not, the laws of gravity and the laws of economics cannot be held at bay for very long.
And as much that's a sobering thought to many people, right? Because that's not what we want to hear. Why do you feel that as humans, patience doesn't come naturally to us?
I think, it's interesting. I think part of it is maybe the human condition, but part of it is also what we've been conditioned to see online, right? Things have shifted so dramatically. You can be anyone and anything online, and that's only going to get more extreme as you get into things like virtual worlds and metaverses, where you can claim to be something and you can claim to be someone, and that the reality behind that facade and that perception that you've put forward may not be true. So I think there's a lot more comparison to things that may not actually have a basis in fact. And it's hard to say, wait a minute, I see this online. If this should be true, if X is true, then Y should also be true. But the reality is that X is not true, or X is only half true. And so, you have a challenge in terms of measuring yourself, whether that is results, whether that is returns, whether that is investments, whether that is anything, compared to a world where the truth is now very hard to distinguish.
It really is. And something which I think we all struggle with, because we are our own toughest critics. And someone like yourself who's achieved so much in your very short lifespan and your career too, how do you measure your success now that you would say that patience is your superpower?
Yes. So I think it is, what is your legacy and what are you going to leave for the long term, right? I mean, you see plenty of these things where, we see sort of the sugar high, right, of a project that pops and does something interesting and cool. But when you turn in and you look in your heart of hearts, like, are they doing things that are really going to change the world for the better? And I think, when you're talking about things like a major shift in compute and compute paradigm, it is, how do you work towards that? And how do you get up in the morning and be inspired to do the work to make that a reality, and not let the other things distract you, right? Not let the sort of short-term pops or buzzes distract you from a mission that, if you put in the hard work and you continue to be focused, is going to, have a long-lasting impact on the world.
That long-term vision, because I'm a Stoic, I'm very philosophical. And the idea of us conceptualizing our own death and then what, of course, exists once we're not here, that's hard for a lot of us, because ultimately we don't know how long we're going to live. And so to build a legacy knowing that, hey, we could die any day, or we could live for another 50, 60 years. Have you found that investing in whole, because we know you don't just invest in crypto, that since you've been an investor, your perspective of life has changed? And if so, what changes have you seen that's come from the investing world that you've brought into your real world?
Yeah, so I think, I was very fortunate. When I was growing up, my dad, much to my chagrin, wanted to talk to me all the time about the stock market and investing and, hey, you shouldn't go buy those pair of Guess jeans. You should put that into the market. And I was like, whatever, dad, you're crazy, right? But I think having some of that foundationally in terms of thinking about, your buckets of spending, saving, giving, that is, really important fundamentally to think about from day one. I think also, I'm a mom. Having kids gives you a different perspective on both your view of investing as well as sort of imparting that to your children. It is not just about you, and it's not just, yes, it's important to save and spend, but we try to convey to them that equally important is this bucket of giving, right? And thinking about whether that is giving today, whether that is putting in place mechanisms to give going forward into the future, or whether that is, saving and investing in ways that are ethical and responsible and are guided by principles that think about the way that you want the future to look. So I think that, probably just as much as my career has taught me more about investing, having kids has given it just an equal perspective in terms of what do you need to think about longer term and what you're, what you're leaving from when you're gone from this world.
I know there's a certain person watching this right now. He's a father. His name's Tiago, and he has kids. And I know from speaking to a lot of parents, I'm now a dog dad. So puppy's not quite the same, but still, I'm responsible for another being.
That's right.
And I know Tiago and any other parents watching this right now will be able to emphasize with you, Zenobia, understanding that the empathy that when you are now responsible for something that's bigger than you, your investing decisions change, your daily habits change, and hopefully for the better. And it sounds like that has been for you, which is lovely.
Yeah, and you're trying to model those behaviors for them, right? And as much as now my kids complain when grandpa wants to watch Bloomberg with them, we hope that they're getting a little bit of it along the way.
That is awesome. You hear that now? Get the next generation ready with Bloomberg. Forget all the other cartoons. Forget Peppa Pig. You heard it here.
Yeah.
So if anyone watching live right now, because we do have a live audience, you want to pick Zenobia's brain, she will be hanging around towards the end. That's your opportunity. So leave your questions in the comments below. If you're on YouTube, that's where you'll be able to do it. If you're on Twitter or any other platform, sorry, you're going to have to come over to YouTube. Ask your question. Our producer will save it. And towards the end, if you're lucky, I'll ask it. So now it comes to my favorite part of the show, which is the weakness. Because ultimately, it's easy to talk about what we're good at. But ultimately, I'd love to know, as an investor, how do you handle your weakness? And what is your weakness?
Yes. So I think, my weakness is that I don't know that men and women invest the same way, right? I am probably more conservative. I feel like I really need to know and understand and do a lot of in-depth research on something before taking a leap into that. And given everything else that's on my plate, I just don't have the time to do that for a lot of projects or a lot of things that are, out of the scope of what I see day to day. So I think that, from that perspective, there are two sides of the coin in terms of being involved in a project or a company where it is your day in and day out, right? You don't see, you do see a lot of entrepreneurs say, yep, most of what I'm invested in is tied to what I'm doing. And I think that is, there, you have a certain degree of control over that, right? Because it is your destiny. You're helping to shape that destiny. Much as I say, I try to be a patient investor. I'm a very impatient person when it comes to pushing things forward and trying to tell the story and trying to get the most out there and, moving that forward as much as possible. So I think that, having that sort of purview and that scope does not allow me to focus on a lot of other things. Whereas, someone who invests for a living or is able to carve out more time for that probably has a little bit of a broader purview.
And I know you're not alone, and here's Susie. Actually, I was just on a show and Susie's come over here and Susie said she feels the exact same way. And I believe that's in relation to wanting to know all the ins and outs. And Susie, correct me if I'm wrong there. Where do you draw the line then, Zenobia? Because ultimately, there is a level where you know enough now, where you're confident to now vote with your money. For you, do you have a checklist to help that weakness and offset that?
I do. I mean, I tend to stay within things that I know, right? So I tend to stay within enterprise technology. I tend to stay within things like DLT as well as cybersecurity, which are two areas where I've spent a lot of time. There's all manner of things that come up, right? Hey, do you want to invest in this, this medical device company? Well, I'm not a doctor. I don't know enough about that market to make an easy decision, and I would have to do a lot of research in order to participate that way. I think another area that I feel pretty strongly about is helping female entrepreneurs. So working with VCs and funds that actively either have female partners or that say as part of their mission, they are going to support female founders. I think that's both a mission-driven goal, but also if you look at the returns from female-led companies, they're phenomenal. There's not as many of them, but if you look at the absolute returns compared to just a general fund, they tend to be higher. So it is both a decision of conscience as well as a financial decision to say, I want to focus on, those companies and funds that support female founders.
That's beautiful. And you know what's interesting is, I don't know how you did it, but you turned your weakness into another superpower. So thanks for ruining the format, Zenobia. But that's
Apologies.
no, it's absolutely fine, because the radical candor saying, actually, I'm a slow investor. I'm slow to make my decisions. In fact, you're quite boring by the sounds of things when it comes to your investment decisions. Has that always been the case?
I think that, I think so. I will say my father is a CPA. His suggested path for me in life was to become an actuarial scientist, which is the people who manage like the risk tables for insurance companies. So as you can imagine, there's always been that element of being conservative and being smart about your money. Now, I will say the first time I joined a startup, he was like, this is crazy. You're leaving a job at Intel. Intel is a well-respected company and, has all this security. And he and my mom were like, that's fine. She'll just move home with us in 6 months if this company goes out of business. So I would say, I have taken risks in my professional life, and, that has been to join startups, to join companies that aren't the Intels of the world. Then to say, so in my purview, I am much more comfortable, making investments or being part of these companies where, you potentially have equity or upside, where I actually help control the narrative and control the destiny of the company. There's millions of startups out there. So, my criteria sort of ends up being, do I believe in this company enough to go work for them? And then from there, do I have a role where I can make an impactful difference?
That answers a lot on that checklist when you say, would I go work for that company? Because ultimately, we then internally ask ourselves a lot of questions. Am I willing to now give up 80% of my working week, a week anyway, to contribute to someone else's vision? And I, for one, now, even reflecting on my own portfolio, I can safely say I would. And I'm constantly assessing that, because it's a hypothesis at the end of the day.
It
So
is.
for you, when we talk about working for that company, of course, we know Swirlds Labs now is that company. You said, of course, female entrepreneurs has a special place in your heart right now. Going a little bit off topic, where do you feel the biggest weaknesses for female investors? Where do you feel what's holding them back?
Yeah, I think that, it was interesting. So when I first started doing some angel investing, I was talking to a group of women, and one of the women pointed out, in a lot of cases, in a family dynamic, and this is, this was over a decade ago, but in a family dynamic, it's very easy for women to say to their partner, hey, I'm gonna go contribute to this cause, or I'm going to, this is where I'd like our charitable dollars to go. There's not as much of the discussion of, hey, I am going to be engaged in this, venture, or this is where I would like our investment dollars to go. And so I think, having women make that shift in mindset to, you should be able to think about those things, and you should be able to, have those decisions, be a vocal participant in those decisions for your family. But then the other part of it is just getting access to those deals, right? So if women are not in companies, in the circles of where financing is happening, if they are not actively engaged with companies, they're going to miss out on some of the opportunities that folks who might be kind of engaged in startup ecosystems, or might be engaged in other kinds of investments are. So I think it's kind of saying, okay, whatever my day-to-day job is, I do want to proactively think about how I am contributing to the family's investment strategy, and then how I put myself in a place where I can be in that flow and be in front of those opportunities.
And then to follow up, we talk about being in the flow with those opportunities. And again, speaking mainly to the female audience who either are on the fence about investing or currently are investing and want to find more opportunities. Where can a female investor go to find these opportunities before it's too late?
Yeah, so I think I think there are a number of places that you can think about. First is to think about what and what you would be comfortable, doing and working with and investing in. And then I think second is thinking about how can you apply your skills to help companies, right? Whether that is to volunteer, whether that is to provide some kind of guidance or advice. Those are areas where, for both men and women, when you provide that kind of help and people see that you can be a valuable part of their ecosystem, then I think they're more likely to engage you on multiple fronts, including potentially the investor front. So I think that's, sort of figuring out what is your niche, what are the areas where you would be able to really understand what is a potentially good opportunity versus not, where you can answer the right kinds of questions, and when your expertise can potentially help, teams or the people that you are, are working with, and potentially get you in that flow. And then, that's outside of the, hey, just, do your research online in terms of traditional equity asset classes.
Fantastic. And talking about doing your research online, DYOR, but where and how? So whether it's within the Hedera ecosystem or Swirlds Labs, is an opportunity, Zenobia, for female investors to either work for Swirlds Labs or Hedera that we can potentially pull out of you right now?
So I think we do have, I don't know all of the openings available, but definitely check on the Swirlds Labs and Hedera sites. We have recently hired a female executive on the Hedera team. So that is very exciting. But yes, certainly I would say both of those, check those job boards and then get engaged with the community. So Elizabeth Chase does a great series of Twitter Spaces every Thursday at 5 Eastern. There's always a ton of, community members on there where they are willing to think about, engaging with other people. They want to meet other people. You can learn about ideas and projects that are being built, on Hedera. There is also the Female Founders Fund coming out of the HBAR Foundation, led by Jennifer Kim. So if you are building a project and you are looking for funding and support from the foundation, that is something to definitely look at as well. And I think, the nice part about crypto, even though there is a disparity in terms of participation between men and women, is that we're still so early in this journey. So those of us who have been through, 3 or 4 crypto winters by now might feel like we have aged quite a bit, but we are just in the first inning of this. We are 1999 for the web. And so there is plenty of opportunity. There's plenty of time to learn and to participate, when you find something that really speaks to you.
That's beautiful. And for everyone listening, that term gets thrown around a lot. Hey, we're here just at the dot-com bubble. Hey, we're here in the 90s before the internet was a thing. But this isn't coming from you from thin air. You lived through that experience. What are you doing differently? And this will be my final question, Zenobia. What are you doing differently then this time around, seeing the parallels from the dot-com boom?
Yes, I think so. That was pretty early in my career. I allowed myself some panic then. I allowed myself to sort of that was, my second and third jobs out of school, right? I allowed myself to read things and sort of be swung by them. And I allowed myself to worry about, gosh, maybe this internet thing is not going to work out, because like every article seems to be saying, we don't really need the internet.
You can doubt your own investment. So
Absolutely. So I think, when I think about that, and the parallels are so clear here, it is just saying, put your head down, stop reading. There's so much news online, and there can be so many naysayers. And they come from all different angles, right? They are, the government is going to shut down all kinds of blockchain innovation. The market hasn't proved itself out, so it has to go away. On the flip side, we see so many companies investing and so many thoughtful uses for DLT, both by enterprises as well as by government agencies. So just putting on a little bit of those blinders and saying, okay, I'm not going to be swayed by sort of the current naysayers. And it used to be, one of my first jobs, the IR folks would call and complain, and you'd literally get the voicemails or the phone calls about it. Now they just scream at you on Twitter. And so I think also taking those folks with a grain of salt.
So powerful, because it's so easy, like you say, to be distracted, especially on Twitter, which is a powerful resource. Don't get me wrong. But what I pulled out, and I know we joked just now, was you have doubted your own investments in the past. And I'm sure many people, myself included, have doubted your own investments. And instantly we think, I shouldn't doubt my investment. I should have 100% belief constantly throughout holding. And what I love about you, Zenobia, is there's no ego, completely vulnerable, and saying that doubt will creep in. And by the sounds of things, you've mentioned community, you've mentioned putting yourself around a table, around people where you can block out the noise and arguably speak to the people who are working at the companies to find out what's going on. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. And, I think, so my first job out of school was for Intel. The CEO, Andy Grove, had written a book called Only the Paranoid Survive. Right. And so I think that is, that's a great saying. It is, you have to have a little bit of doubt, not to the point where you give up faith, but to the point where you say, hey, I'm going to be paranoid. I'm going to be paranoid about everything going on around me so that I can be the most competitive. I can, think about all the things that we should be doing. I can have that restlessness to say, we're not going to rest on our laurels. We have to keep going, and we have to keep pushing forward. Because otherwise, like you said, only the paranoid survive.
Paranoia pays. So if you remember anything, everyone, Zenobia's new superpower is paranoia. So embrace it. Embrace it. And it goes without saying, our time is up with you. Super respectful for all the marvelous work that you're doing, both in the Hedera ecosystem and, of course, what you're doing for female empowerment as investors. It goes without saying, best way people can contact you, Twitter. Are you open to people reaching out over there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely. And as a reminder for everyone who may have just joined us a little bit late, that there are job opportunities at both Swirlds Labs, Hedera, and of course that new HBAR Foundation fund that's opening up as well.
Yes, yep. The female founders fund is open. So for those interested in building applications, definitely check them out too.
Fantastic. It goes without saying, Zenobia, thank you for your time, because that's one thing you can't get back. The comments are beautiful, and I know in the replay they will continue to pour in, and I hope we see you again on the show soon.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you for everything that you do. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Zenobia. Now hang around, because we'll catch up after this. But for everyone else at home, now you can see one of your favorite super investors. She's human, and keep that paranoia. Until next time, we'll see you next Monday, where we have May, the CEO and founder of Hashgraph, arguably one of the leading wallets in the Hedera ecosystem. So we're going to follow that theme. And we'll see you next Monday. A pleasure.